The Detroit Pistons have played their first preseason game. Jaden Ivey started out strong. Holland impressed, and also some interesting things with the rotation from JP Bickerstaff. We'll talk about all that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free available on our podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button for it. Leave us a 5-star review on our podcast platform. It's another great way to support the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. First $5 bet, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So the Detroit Pistons have finally played their first preseason game against the Milwaukee Bucks. Whether they win or lose, that's not important. Whether they won or lost the game, that's not what's important here. There were some immediate takeaways that right in the first half really jumped off the page, especially Jaden Ivey. Holland impressed, and we'll talk about the rotation a little bit later as well. Before we get into anything, though, I do want to make this very clear. I want to go ahead and put this public service announcement out there. Everyone remember, it is preseason. We all can go through preseasons in the past years. We've seen something, and then it doesn't happen in the regular season. We get overreacted to one thing. Just everything take with the level of a grain of salt when it comes to preseason. Like, don't go too crazy on everything. Don't get too low on anything. Try to have reasonable takeaways. Look, just remember, it's the preseason. That's all I'm trying to get out there. However, the immediate takeaway, my first takeaway has to be that Jaden Ivey looked absolutely spectacular in this first game for the Detroit Pistons. He played 23 minutes. We'll talk about how JP Bickerstaff staggered him and Cade Cunningham a little bit later. But Jaden Ivey's play I think he easily was probably the best player in this game. He only really played the first half. They played a few minutes in the third quarter, but and then they started getting the reserves and whatever. But I thought he was probably easily their best player tonight. He came out the gate absolutely on fire. I believe he was 5 of 6 in the first half. Two things about his game that I really love seeing. Number one, he hit 3 threes tonight, and all 3 of his threes came from the corner. Now, if he's able to become an above average, a really reliable corner 3-point catch and shooter, that really changes the kind of lineups you can play with him and how much gravity he has off ball. I think that could be big time for him. Again, it is preseason, it's the first game, but all 3 of his threes that he made, he went 3 of 3. All of them were from the corner, and that could be a very serious development for him this upcoming season. I'm trying not to get too crazy with it, but that is incredibly interesting to see. If he's actually improved from the corners, that's an area you need to have guys really have some threats in the corners. I'm sorry, when it comes to spacing out the floor. And the other part of his game that I thought was actually pretty impressive for me. Look, he scored 22 points because he's Jaden Ivey, and when he's able to finish at the basket, he was finishing pretty well tonight. But he's just so explosive. Everyone knows this. He's explosive. He's quick. I feel like he was a player out there on either team that played the hardest. I don't think there was a player on either team that played harder than him, that had more energy than him. He was playing this like it was a regular season game and taking it as serious as possible, which is good. He was taking every rep as serious as possible, like he was trying to get better with each rep he was given. So I commend that. He was playing with a ton of energy. Again, like I said, some of the things he was doing offensively, we already know he can do, like finishing around the rim. His rim pressure was off the charts, but that stuff we already expected. Two things that I liked that I didn't necessarily see as much from last year: the corner 3-point shooting that we saw in this, like I mentioned, and then defensively, I saw him execute an X-out closeout in this game in the first half. Immediately got me intrigued. I believe he also had a block on Dame after he got beat off the dribble, but kept with the play and swatted a shot from Dame at the rim out of bounds. He looked like he was just playing with more energy defensively, like he was more locked in defensively. It wasn't like he was an all-world defender, but we don't need him. Pistons don't need him to be an all-world defender. They need him to be locked in, They need him to be able to execute rotations, and they need him to not be a blow-by on defense on ball-wise. And I thought he was better defensively tonight. I thought overall, like I said earlier, I think he was just the player with the most energy and the player with the – it felt like he had the most to prove in a preseason game. It was the first game of preseason, and he wanted to set the tone immediately that, hey, I'm here to get better. I'm here to showcase what I've worked on. Now, I'm not going to let any rep go by that I won't take advantage of. So I really liked what we saw from Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey played absolutely fantastic. He was used on ball and off ball. I know I said we're going to get into the rotation a little bit later, but just to dabble in it a little bit here. Jaden Ivey played a lot of his minutes without Cade Cunningham, as well with how JB used him and Cade, especially in the second quarter of this game. Jaden Ivey started, I believe, like the first 6 minutes of the game without Cade, or the first 6 minutes of that quarter without Cade, and played really well. Had a really nice lob pass to Jalen Duren out of the pick and roll that I thought was really impressive. Continued to get to the basket at will and score the basketball and draw free throws. He missed his first 2 free throw attempts and then made his next 7. He got to the free throw line 9 times, and he only played, like I said, 23 minutes. He was just electric out there. He was just nonstop fury, nonstop go, 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 go. So he got to play the first 6 minutes of the second quarter without Cade, and I thought he played really well in that spurt. I thought at the beginning of the third quarter, now at this time, the Bucks did sit all their main guys, so the Pistons were going against bench players, so it's hard to take much from that. But I thought he had a few plays playing off of Cade in that third quarter that looked really impressive. One, Cade came off a pick and roll on the left wing to his right, swung it back to Jaden Ivey on the weak side, and Jaden Ivey immediately attacked the closeout, got to the rim, drew a foul, and finished with and one. So I thought he had some good plays playing off of Cade. I thought he played pretty well, organizing his own unit as well in the second quarter. His outside shot was on point, especially from the corners. He continued to draw free throws. He continued to get to the rim. His explosiveness was off the charts as usual, and he was finishing at the rim really well as well. So Jaden Ivey, incredible first impression from Jaden Ivey. I don't want to go too crazy with it because it is preseason. I'm trying not to get too high or too low on anything we see from preseason. We've seen, I don't need to go through everything, but if there was a player that immediately set the tone in preseason and immediately started who immediately jumped off the TV to you, or whether you're watching on TV or stream, whatever, whoever jumped off the page to you, it was Jaden Ivey immediately. Started off 5 of 6, and it was all over the place offensively, especially when the Pistons didn't have, to start the game off, they were down by 20 instantly, close to 20 immediately. And they weren't getting any offense going for real. They were sloppy as a team. And then Jaden Ivey kind of just said, screw it, I'm going to take the ball to the rim, and I'm going to draw some fouls. I'm going to finish at the basket. I'm going to hit some corner threes. And he was really their offense early in that first quarter. So incredible start for Jaden Ivey. I'm interested to see how he plays the rest of preseason, how he plays preseason the rest of the time. Is he going to give this type of effort every single preseason game? Is he going to play every single preseason game like it's a regular season game, like he's playing for his last contract or something? He was playing extremely hard in this game in the first half, much harder than anybody else. And you love to see that. He's taking advantage of every rep. So I thought Jaden Ivey was spectacular in the first half. I thought this is exactly how he wanted to start it out. Now I'm interested to see how well he continues to shoot from the corners and how well how much more he stays locked in on defensive rotations and locked in on ball defensively as well moving forward. But first game, hell of a start and hell of an impression from Jaden Ivey. Played really, really well. Let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about Jaden Ivey's start with the Detroit Pistons in their first preseason game against the Milwaukee Bucks. Again, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at @KukaHill. When we come back, I want to talk about another player that impressed and is quickly becoming a fan favorite in the Detroit Pistons community. That is Ron Holland. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at BetterHelp.com/LockedInNBA and get on your way to being your best self. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us, but what about those fears that don't involve zombies or ghosts or Michael Myers or anything like that? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. If you're thinking of starting online therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient and flexible, suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. I do want to quickly apologize to you again, all of you guys listening. You guys can probably tell I don't know what kind of sickness I have. I've been sick for like 2 weeks now. You can hear it in my voice. I'm losing my voice. I'm sorry. We're still, we're keeping it trucking, but I apologize if my voice is bothering you guys. I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on. I'm still feeling sick, so I'm fighting through it, but I just wanted to apologize again if my voice feels a little raggedy or, is frustrating some of you guys. Can't help it. I apologize. Another player that really impressed right out the gate for the Pistons, I'd say, in this game was their rookie, Ron Holland, their 5th overall pick out of the G League Ignite this past season. The Pistons, like I said, start off this game. Let me get the exact what they were. I believe they were down like 23-5 at one point. Like it was bad. They were down 24-6 at one point, and 20-3 at one point. It was not going well at all for the Detroit Pistons. They were getting blitzed by the Milwaukee Bucks. They were just getting bullied by the Milwaukee Bucks. They couldn't get anything going. It was terrible. It was the beginning of the game had everyone in the Pistons community like, here we go again. Already. First preseason game, here we go. But something changed. They made some substitutions, and they brought in Ron Holland and Isaiah Stewart. I'm going to give credit to Stu as well, because I think Stu had a big part in what flipped as well. But Ron Holland is really, he made more impact plays. I think Stu made was just in the right spots and playing the right way. He wasn't going to get the stat sheet with it. Ron Holland was making eye-popping plays instantly on the defensive end and just brought a level of energy that the Pistons were lacking to start the game. And he was just all over the place, whether it was offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, whether it was in the passing lanes, whether it was on ball, whether it was in transition. He was just bringing all kinds of effort and energy in a multitude of ways for the Detroit Pistons. And in this game, he had a plus 25 plus minus. That absolutely matches the eye test. Absolutely matches the eye test. When he came into the game, everything flipped for the Detroit Pistons. I'm not exaggerating at all. As soon as he came into the game, everything switched simply because he was giving nonstop effort. And once he started giving nonstop effort, that second quarter, the Detroit Pistons really turned it around, especially on the defensive end. And I think a main part, or one of the guys who get the most credit for that, is Ron Holland. Ron Holland turned the team around defensively in this game. They weren't giving much effort. It felt like for the first 5 or 6 minutes, they were just treating it like a practice. Like they didn't really Ivy was showing something, but outside that, I felt like everyone was kind of just moping around. And then Ron Holland comes in, changes everything. The Pistons outscore the Bucks 32-19 in that second quarter. And they played much better on the offensive end, but also it started on the defensive end. Ron Holland playing the way he did got Malik Beasley to buy in defensively. He was giving it his all. Cade was giving it his all defensively. Jalen Duren, I thought, was a little bit more active defensively in that second quarter. Even Jaden Ivey, like I mentioned, executed an X-out closeout, was getting active, got a block on Dame. As soon as Ron Holland came in, the defense just became infectious, and everyone just started playing defense. So I think Ron Holland has is a big reason why the Pistons were able to get back into this game in the first half. And, obviously it's a preseason game. Don't really care about the win-loss or, the result of the game. But he was probably the main reason why this game turned and why it wasn't an immediate embarrassment for the Pistons on national TV on ESPN against the Milwaukee Bucks without Giannis. Dame started off hot, but Ron Holland really was the main cog, I think, in what turned this team around in that second quarter, in that late first quarter into the second quarter, simply because of his activity defensively. To get a little bit more, specific with some of the things we saw from Ron Holland, I think you saw what he can bring and what you kind of want to limit from him already in this first game. You instantly saw that he should be able to. Now, it's one preseason game, and we talked about this last year with the SAR. Most rookies are not good defensively. So just assuming that Ron's going to be really good defensively, I don't want to put that on him because it's not fair. Most rookies are not good defensively. However, he was pretty good tonight. That's not me trying to put this expectation on him as an 18, 19-year-old that he's going to be excellent defensively. Again, most rookies aren't. But in this game, he did showcase the athleticism, that tenacity on the defensive end. So he showcased the ability that he could be this year, an athletic wing that gets into it defensively, that gets active on the boards, and is not afraid. I think he even got into, not a scuffle, but he kind of got in the face of Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis was kind of trying to bully him around. He just got right in his face, didn't really care. So he showed physicality defensively. He showed he was very active in transition, obviously, incredibly fast, ran the lanes. Another thing I thought was incredibly impressive from Ron Holland came in the half-court offense. He was making quick decisions off ball, just like that. And you don't understand how big of a deal that is for someone, especially someone who's not providing spacing as a shooter. Like, Ron is not a shooter at this point. He was 0-3 from deep tonight. That's going to be a struggle for him, okay? What really hurts is when you have an outside or someone's trying to space the floor, the ball gets kicked to them. They're not providing much gravity as a spacer, as a shooter, and then they also hold the ball in their hands and they take forever to make a read. They try to do something else with the ball. Ron tonight, on numerous occasions, multiple times, over and over again, was getting the ball and immediately touch passing to the corner. Getting the ball, immediately touch passing to Cade at the top of the key. Getting the ball, immediately touch passing to a roller. He was making quick processing decisions off ball very, very quickly. And there was one possession in the first half that might have been the best ball movement I've seen from a Pistons possession in years. I'm pretty sure there was at least 10 passes on this possession. It went wing to wing, side to side, rotate all the way around. They ended up getting an open three, I believe, for Malik Beasley, who hit it. And Ron, I believe, had 3 of those passes, just quick touch passes, quick reads from Ron. And that is such big time for your half-court offense to have quick processors and guys who are making quick decisions instead of catching the ball, holding. Do I want to shoot? Okay, let me take a few dribbles, okay, then go. It stops the offense. Now, you're going to have that with a guy like Cade. He's the guy who provides the offense. He's the guy who breaks stuff down. Cade's going to ball stop. Jaden Ivey may even ball stop. He's going to be, because they are the initiators. They're the primary ball handlers. But when they start the swinging going, there needs to be quick decisions going on from everybody else. Nobody else needs to be catching the ball, holding, trying to jab, tween. There doesn't need to be doing any of that. Once one of Cade or Ivy, or heck, even Duran, if they're trying to utilize his playmaking, once they get the ball moving, guys need to be making quick decisions. Either I'm catching driving, I'm catching shooting, or I'm touch passing it and keeping the ball moving. And Ron Holland did that multiple times tonight. It was incredibly impressive to me. I don't think you saw that in Summer League. And it was something that I was a bit concerned about after Summer League. I did not think he was showcasing a high level of processing in the Summer League. But I think a lot of that had to do with what we're about to talk about. He had the ball in his hands a lot in Summer League. I don't think that's a recipe for success for him right now. But in this game against Milwaukee, he was making immediate quick reads, and that was incredibly impressive. It impressed the hell out of me when I was watching him do it over and over and over again. Created multiple three-point looks for Fontecchio, for Beasley, for THJ, for Cade. He was creating these looks, and sometimes he may have even gotten the hockey assist, but it was all coming from him just immediately catching the ball and keeping the ball moving, keeping the defense rotating and spinning. That was incredibly impressive. Probably the most impressive thing I saw from him offensively, easily. The fact that he was keeping it moving, was really showcasing some processing speed in the half court. I loved it. I will say, though, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I think what you saw tonight from Ron is also what you saw in Summer League. You want to try to keep his role minimal offensively. You do not want the ball in his hands right now at this point. His handle is extremely, extremely loose at this point. If you watch tonight's game, if you watch Summer League, I would probably say it's more loose than the SARS was at this point last year, which, again, you don't want him. I don't think the Pistons really want him doing that anyways. but you kind of want to keep that at a minimal because he's had a few, possessions where it didn't look all that great. He had 2 turnovers, and a lot of it came from, just he got the ball and tried to do something with it, but his handle just isn't there yet. I think his on-ball, I think his off-ball processing is much higher than his on-ball one. You saw him force a few looks at the rim tonight as well. He shot 4 of 10. A few of those looks were just really rough attempts at the rim, ones that he just didn't really have a shot of making. When he was playing off-ball, when he was cutting to the rim, when he was getting fed easy baskets, when he was just being played as an off-ball playmaker, he looked good. When you put the ball in his hands and he goes in transition, you let him try to go coast to coast, and you start trying to make him make decisions with the ball in his hands off a live dribble, you can see that's something that's not what you want him doing right now. And that's fine. He's extremely young. He's extremely raw. You let that develop over the next few years. But right now, I know JB has some quotes when he's like, oh, we want everybody to participate in the playmaking and taking on the ball handling duties when Cade's off the floor. Yeah, I'd say you probably don't want that from Ron. And you probably don't want to be asking him or putting him in positions to do that because you're going to put him in some tough situations where he shouldn't be in. Let him play that off-ball role. Let him play that off-ball playmaker, be a tenacious defender, be active in transition, be active in the half-court defense, and utilize his half-court off-ball processing and his cutting ability and his athleticism. Let him utilize that and let him develop that other stuff off the court. But I just try to you're probably going to want to minimize that on-ball creation stuff. He needs some time to develop that, but that's fine. But that's my takeaways from Ron Holland. Overall, incredibly impressive from him. Showed me some things that I really liked. And obviously, he's a young guy. He's a very raw prospect. He's going to have things he has to work on. But I think you're starting to see him, or at least JB Bickerstaff, I think you saw them start to figure out already instantly in just the first preseason game, okay, if we're going to play Ron, this is probably the best space in which we should do it because he'll be able to thrive in this, and we should probably keep him from doing this because it will put him in some tough situations. If we play him in this role, he should be able to do his thing and play pretty well as a 18, 19-year-old rookie. So let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about how Ron Holland played in his first preseason game in the NBA. He ended up with 10 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Incredibly active, man. Just incredibly active. Had a steal, had a block as well. Just stuffed the stat sheet and was incredibly, incredibly energetic when he came on the floor for the Detroit Pistons. So, again, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill how you guys feel about Ron Holland's performance. When we come back, I want to touch real quickly on the rotation, how JP Bickerstaff handled his rotation before they just started playing all the reserves was incredibly interesting to me. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I've told you guys this many times a few years ago when betting became legal in Michigan. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to try out. Tried out FanDuel, and I have not turned back since. And actually, even as late as today, FanDuel had the Arizona Cardinals plus 7.5 versus the San Francisco 49ers. I flirted with taking the straight up money line with FanDuel, but I took the 7.5 that they gave me. And, the Cardinals ended up winning that game. So that's the kind of thing you can do over on FanDuel. I should have taken the money line, but I'll take the 7.5 that FanDuel gave me and had a fun time doing it and made out some cheese. You feel me? So that's the kind of thing you can do over on FanDuel. Again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel @Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. It's another great way to support the podcast. All right, so Tobias Harris did not play in this game. They said it was an illness. I was at the open practice yesterday, or I'm recording this on the 6th, so it was a Saturday when the open practice was. He was there. He didn't participate in the live scrimmage, but he looked fine. He was getting shots up. I think he's just a veteran. JB said after the open practice that he's a veteran. They're wanting to pace him. Tobias doesn't need to really be playing in preseason. It's not that big of a deal to him. He's a vet. He'll be fine. It's nothing to be concerned about at all. So they didn't play Tobias. The only other guy that didn't play was Bobby Klintman. He's dealing with some calf soreness. So we didn't get to see him play. Doesn't sound serious at all. I mean, obviously, Asar Thompson did not play. Trajan Langdon was actually interviewed during the game. Was asked about Asar Thompson's update, and he didn't have much of an update at all. He referenced that it's just a process with the league and the players' union, and that they're hoping that they can get Asar back on the court soon. So Asar also said at Media Day that he wants to get back on the court soon. He's looking forward to finally getting back on the court. I don't want to read too much into it. I'm not trying to – I feel like it's irresponsible to really try to, make takeaways on stuff that's very limited info that we're being given. All I'll say is that my read on what they keep saying, it sounds like that this isn't – it sounds like it's just a process they're going through with the union and the league, and they just have to get through that process. Asar sounds healthy. When Trajan talks about it, it sounds like they feel comfortable. I don't know. Actually, let me not speculate too much on it. It feels like Asar wants to play, and he's healthy enough to play, he feels like, and they're just going through a process with the league and the players union to get him officially cleared, whatever that process is. That's just my read on it, but I don't want to speculate too much on it. I feel like that's irresponsible. So those are the guys who did not play. So with that, you had the starters of Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey started, Jalen Duren started, Simone Fontecchio started, and Tim Hardaway Jr. started. Now, I believe if Tobias was healthy and Asar Thompson was healthy, they would be starting in place of Simone Fontecchio and Tim Hardaway Jr. Based on things I've heard, I'm almost 100%. I'm 100% sure Tobias would start. I'm almost 100% sure that Asar Thompson would be starting in place of Tim Hardaway Jr. Actually, let me change that. I'm almost 100% sure that if Asar Thompson was healthy, he'd be starting. Based on things I've heard, I think that would be the case. Whether he starts when he comes back, however long, whenever he comes back, remains to be seen. But if he was healthy right now, my understanding is he probably would be starting. So that was the starting lineup without those guys. Go along with this without those guys. JB Bickerstaff played an 8-man rotation. It was Cade, Ivey, Duren, Simone Fontecchio, and Tim Hardaway Jr. And then the 3 guys that came off the bench were Malik Beasley, Ron Holland, and Isaiah Stewart. That was an 8-man rotation. I'm incredibly interested to see how deep he goes once Tobias returns and Asar Thompson returns. Give me just a second. We'll dive into that a little bit further, but I want to get to how he staggered Cade and Ivey first real quickly. I know I'm bouncing a little bit all over the place, but I just want to hit this first. So Jaden Ivey operated as the Pistons' backup point guard, but they did it in a unique way. Jaden Ivey came out with 8 minutes left. Cade played the rest of the first quarter. Not without Ivey. I believe Ivey came back in with about 4 minutes left. So Ivey came out in the first after playing 4 minutes, sat for 4 minutes, came back in at the 4-minute mark. Cade played the whole first quarter, got to play 4 minutes without Ivey. Ivey played 8 of those minutes with Cade in the first quarter. Then once the first quarter ended, Jaden Ivey played the first, I believe, 6-7 minutes of the second quarter. And then Cade was brought in for him. And then Cade closed out that quarter with his own lineup. So Ivey got to have about 6 minutes, I'd say, without Cade and have his own lineup. And then Cade got to close out the game or close out that quarter with spacing. I think he had Ron Holland, Malik Beasley, Simone Fontecchio, and Jalen Duren was his lineup that he played with. So they were both given their own lineup. Jaden Ivey was played as their backup point guard, but JB did it in a unique way. Had him in the starting lineup, staggered him. Even in the first quarter, gave Cade 4 minutes without Ivey, then brought Ivey right back into the game, let him play for, I believe, what was that? Played the last 4 minutes, first 6. So he played 10 straight minutes from the first to the second quarter, and then Cade got to close out the second quarter without Ivey. So I'm interested to see if that's something that continues as the preseason goes on. I know they're going to test out multiple different lineups, multiple different, maybe even different rotations. I'm interested to see, does that part of the rotation stay the same even when guys are healthy? So I liked how they did it. It gave each guy their own time without the other. It gave each guy time to play with each other. And they always had one of them on the floor. That was big time. That was something they struggled with a lot this past year, where they just did not have them on the floor at the same time at all times. It really probably should be the case. And JB did that in what was, the meaningful part of the game. Not in the second half, but they weren't playing in the second half. In the first half, one of Cade or Ivey were on the floor at all times, and it never felt like either one. I know it's the first preseason game, but it never felt like either one was getting gassed out from having to play too much because of it. Like, again, it is the first preseason game. You wouldn't expect to see people get gassed out, but you get what I'm saying. It didn't feel like either guy was being played for too long of a stretch or anything. They both got their minutes. They were both staggered, I thought, correctly. And I think it worked out for the Pistons, especially in that second quarter. I think the second quarter, Ivey was already playing well in the first quarter. I think he played really well in the second, and I thought the second stint from Cade in the second quarter was really good as well. Cade started out rough in the first quarter. In the second quarter, I thought he played really well. That's staggering. I thought it played a big part of it, and I think JB really executed that correctly. I'm interested to see if he continues that. The other part I want to talk about is, like I mentioned earlier, when Tobias and Ausar Thompson comes back, how is the rotation going to look? Because I think based on things we've heard from JB, based on things I've heard, and based on things that we've seen happen, I think JB, I'm going to take the guess, the hypothesis, the educated guess, that JB wants to go with a 9-man rotation. So if Tobias comes back, that's fine, because then you're at a 9-man rotation. So I'm going to assume that Simone Fontecchio would come out, Tobias would start, and then you just play that 9-man rotation with Cade, Ivey, Duren, Simone Fontecchio, Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, Ron Holland, Isaiah Stewart, and Malik Beasley. That's your 9-man. Once Ausar Thompson comes back, then it starts to get dicey, because now you'd have a 10-man rotation. So does Tim Hardaway Jr. flat lose his minutes? I'm assuming Ron Holland would take his then in that case. And then you'd have a rotation of Stu, Beasley, Cade, Ivey, Duren, Simone Fontecchio, Tobias, and Ausar. Like, would that be your rotation right there? And does Ron Holland stay in the rotation? Because right now he played 26 minutes in this game. And he played some in the second half, but he was part of the legit rotation in the first half. Like, the legit rotation they played in the first half, he was part of it. So when Ausar comes back and Tobias comes back, I don't think he wants to go, JB, that is 10-man deep. So who's losing minutes amongst Ron Holland and Tim Hardaway Jr.? I think those are the only two guys that are, like, potentially losing minutes. That would be at stake of losing minutes, not Stu or Beasley or anyone else in the starting lineup. And does Ron stay in, or does THJ stay in? Or does JB really just want to go with 8-man rotation off the top? Maybe there's two players that just lose it. Maybe both Ron and THJ lose their minutes, and they just go with Ausar and Tobias. I don't know. I think that's going to be incredibly interesting. He stuck to that 8-man rotation in the first half. I think that he would not have stuck with that if Tobias was there. I think he would have saw a 9-man. I think 9-man is what he wants to do. I think 9-man rotation is what most coaches want to aim for. That would be my assumption. But we got to see it play out the rest of the preseason. I thought it was incredibly interesting, though, this first game to read into his rotation, especially the staggering of Cade and Ivey. I thought he did a really good job with that. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill how you guys felt about how JB handled the rotation in the first preseason game. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Detroit Pistons basketball is officially back. Preseason basketball is here. A few weeks away from the home opener against the Indiana Pacers. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I'll see you guys there. Till next time, peace out, everybody.